Actually totally doable though, right? I mean, the only thing we have to do is save them for the children in a space.
Hello, everyone. This is Tim Selden and Clint Lausch. I'm from the Montessori Foundation. Clint Lausch is from a company called Ames. He's working very closely these days with the Montessori Foundation, and we're really happy to work with him. This is Finding the Perfect Match, our weekly our weekly webcast for Montessori school leaders, people in admissions, recruitment, leadership of schools. And I think today's topic is how to uh, how to reach out to families in today's market, right, Clint?
That's right. Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about, what the data is telling us. And some of you have been a part of our webinars. Some of the data you may have seen before. We talk about it a lot, but we talk about it a lot for a reason because unless that data changes, it still helps drive our decision making. It drives, how we want to position ourselves marketing. And we'll talk about some new things that we're seeing that, we weren't even talking about 6 months ago, which is AI. No, we've always been talking about AI, I feel like, for the last 2, 3 years. But the thing that is moving faster than ever right now is AI search. So we are seeing more and more people that are going to the chat GPTs and just still in Google and all the other AI platforms, Perplexity, and they're also doing searches for school there now. And so, okay, now that's another thing for us to worry about. It's okay. Not only can we have to be found in Google, how do we get found on these search, these AI platforms? So these are all the things that we want to talk about. And then towards the end today, for anybody that is interested that wants to hang out, we're going to spend a few minutes to talk about. And you may have received a few emails about this. It's about the service that Tim and I have put together, and I'm really proud to be working with the foundation on this. Is that thinking about, okay, what do Montessori schools need to do to really succeed, to move the needle in their with their school, to attract those right fit families, and ultimately fill all of your seats. And we put together a we call it the enrollment accelerator, where it's a full marketing game plan that really matches how families are doing their research and how they're choosing schools. And so if anybody's interested in learning more about that, we're going to talk about that at the end. If you're not interested in that, you can always hop off. Today is going to apply no matter whether you work with us or not. It's going to give you really good information about how we need to really start thinking um, about our marketing and the journeys that parents are going through. Just a real quick, give me a one or a two, maybe really easy in the chat. Who has seen Tim and I go through the concept of the family journey? And so type in a one if you've seen that, type in a two if you have not seen that.
A number of twos. Good to see old friends here. Shelley DeBar, we're so glad you're here. I see my friend Kelly Easter is here. We should mention, by the way, that the work that we're getting ready to, we actually have launched it as of this morning. What we call the Enrollment Growth Accelerator is what Clint was doing before, but it includes the Montessori Foundation's expertise
Yeah.
as consultants and advisors and mentors. And we've created a new organization that all of our clients will be working with, which is called the Circle. And the Circle is not meant to replace AMS, AMI, IMC, or any other group. It's essentially a professional body of friends. I see Marlene is there, for example, from Chevy Chase. Um, and this is intended for you, Marlene, to be part of a circle of fellow school leaders where you've got all kinds of playbooks and resources, videos, and access to us and free consultation, all kinds of things that'll be part of the enrollment accelerator. And I know we
Yeah.
have way too many programs, right? We got the Grow Suite, the Montessori Grow Suite. We've got Ames. You've got the Montessori Foundation. We've got our mentorship programs. We've got the Family Alliance.
Yeah.
It gets a little confusing at times, but I think we're here to help, is what we always say.
Yeah. Well, and they all go together, right? So, in thinking about how can we best serve schools? I mean, part of it's these webinars, part of it is software, right? We need software to run all of this stuff. And then whether it's marketing services to pull the levers. And then it's the circle, the community. And sometimes, we always hear from schools, sometimes that becomes even the most valuable aspect. to be able on a daily basis connect with other school leaders. So, having all of those pieces together in one spot, and that's where, this is something I've been doing for, working with schools for the past decade, but specifically on the marketing services for the past 4 years. And then, partnering with the foundation, really bringing this to Montessori schools and then leveraging Tim's expertise and what he, and, how he's going to be able to help schools with things that are really the most important aspects, which is your messaging, right? How do you create messaging out there that's going to be magnetic to your families? That's really excited about that. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end for those that are interested in learning more about how we can help them. And but we want to talk today and get us started with what's going on right now. What's the data telling us in terms of how families are choosing schools? Some of this data, I think we had a lot of people say have a two in here, so maybe you haven't seen this. We had one. So Cortland, I think you had a one. So some of this in the beginning might be a little bit of a repeat for you, but we're also going to dive into what we need to do today to really ramp up our marketing to match how families are doing this. So, Tim, before we dive in, anything else you want to make sure we cover as we're kicking things off here?
I just want to make a quick pitch for next week's program. We're going to be talking next week about the Montessori Family Alliance 2.0. AI has changed everything, and one of the things that we are doing, thanks to Clint's expertise in working with AI and some of my other colleagues, we're taking Abigail, and some of you know who Abigail is. She's my AI virtual assistant who's been trained over the last 2 years. We're turning her loose for parents. Wait till you see what a parent will experience inside of the new Montessori Family Alliance, because it's all part of it. And where this fits in with today's topic is all of us are probably fooling around with ChatGPT or Claude or something, and it's really scary. And if you use it right, it's good. If you use it wrong, it's absolutely disastrous, and it's very hard to keep up with. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we've got a good handle on it. We're working with some of the best people in the world in AI who are doing it in the non-military zone. By the way, can you believe we are at war? Don't even get me started. What that could possibly impact all of us. The bottom line is are we are really at a time when we need to be paying very close attention to how quickly the world is changing, what it's going to take to keep our schools full in an era where the population is declining, the birth rate has fallen, the public schools are offering more and more programs for really young children, and we really have to be on our game to keep our schools full.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of cool stuff coming out, and we're excited to bring it to you. And today we're excited to talk about this concept of the family journey, specifically the family journey that Montessori schools or Montessori families are going through as they're, you have some families that they know they want Montessori and they're trying to figure out the best route to go. The others are trying to figure out, they're looking at all types of schools, right? Public schools, private schools, other Montessori schools, Waldorf schools, and why they should consider Montessori. So we're going to talk about what kind of research that they're doing. So let's go through. So let's talk a little bit about how marketing has changed. This is some data that this is probably the most obvious piece of data that we have here, where 87% of consumers are researching online before engaging with the school. Of course they are, right? Not a surprise. We all know this. Yes, word of mouth plays a big role, but we all know that a lot has happened online. So not a big deal. I'm not going to spend too much time there. This is one that always shocks me when I see it. You may have heard me talk about this one before, but it's not going away. And if anything, this number on the right is going to keep getting higher. And this is the concept where if you spent any time in marketing, studying marketing data, there was this old tried and true statistic that said someone needs to see your offer, your school, your brand 5 to 7 times before they choose if they're going to quote unquote buy from you, right? That number is now up to over 33 times they need to see you, which is crazy to think about. But it's not too crazy when you think about what's going on in the world, which is we've got a million different social media platforms. We wake up to 200 emails, right? There was this other statistic. I wish I wrote it down, which was like maybe 30 years ago, you would see maybe 5,000 ads in a week. and now you see 5,000 ads a day, and we're all experiencing that. So again, we have to think about, and this came from C3 Metrics, where they said, you need to have a lot of different touch points where families are seeing you. I call this omnipresence, omnichannel, or omnipresence. How can we be everywhere all the time? Which sometimes a little bit easier said than done, but nice. There's tools available to actually do that. Um, and then this is always a really important one, which I think we kind of know intuitively, which is because of all the research that's happening online. HubSpot had this data from actually a couple of years ago, and I don't know if they've updated it, but it's probably going to get even higher, which is 70% of a family's decision is already made before they ever speak to somebody in the school, meaning they're talking with friends and family, they're researching, they're going to Google, they're going to your website, they're doing all these things. So by the time they actually pick up the phone to give you a call, schedule the tour, come to the open house, their mind is in large part potentially made up, but really they're just looking for confirmation of what they already learned. And so we have to think about during that research process, how do we influence their decision making, right? So we're going to get to all that. And then there's some interesting data that came from Niche that's been updated. I was really looking at this from 2 years ago, and they updated it last year, and I'm really looking forward for the next one to come out, which is they do this big parent survey, and they start looking at what's part of the journey, what's the data telling us about how families are choosing schools. So 64% of families are considering 3 or more schools. So if they're applying to you, most are applying to at least 2 or more schools in addition to you. More than 60% are beginning their search 6+ months before deciding where to go. I can't tell you any schools I talked to where it's like, yeah, we had a tour with a family, their child's not even born yet, and they're looking where they're going to go, right? So we know that, yes, there are families that are ready to kind of make their decision right now, but so many of them are 6 months, a year, 2 years away from making a decision. So the thing that we have to start asking ourselves is, how do we stay engaged with them? And I think this is probably one of the most underutilized aspect of our marketing, because many times, in working with schools for so long and running ad campaigns, we kind of all want them to see the ad, to book the tour, to apply now. And like I said, they're out there, right? But it's a smaller audience. The bigger audience are those families that are in that research phase. So how do we attract them and stay top of mind and hopefully guide them to considering your school when that child's born or 12 months from today? So we'll talk about that. I think it was about a year and a half ago where Google finally took over as the #1 way that families are choosing to start their search for a school. Now, what's interesting is the data from 2025, it pretty much said only 4% of searches were happening through AI. Now, I don't have the updated data right now as we're in the 3 months into 2026. I can tell you a little bit anecdotally. I can tell you what I'm seeing some of the big companies out there are doing. Faster than ever, I'm seeing people gravitate towards AI search, both on the consumer side and both on, if you're a business, or obviously in our case, a school, how do we show up when somebody goes to ChatGPT and they say, I'm looking for schools that are under $15,000 that have open enrollment. Can you find them for me? Or I'm looking for a school that offers financial aid. I'm looking for a school that does X, Y, and Z. They're no longer just going to Google and typing in best private schools near me, and then you hope you show up at the top of Google. That's still happening. I'm not even going to venture to say that's not happening. That's still the majority, and we still want to take that into consideration. But we don't want to completely neglect what AI is doing, just from the perspective of how we're using and searching on a regular basis. And so I would say for schools that start taking that a little bit more seriously now, I would call you early to the game, which is a good thing, which means there's not as much competition to try to rank in AI search. So again, that's probably a whole 2 hours we could spend just on how to do that, but it's something for you to take note of. If you like doing your own research like me, where you just start going down YouTube rabbit holes, this will also be what the circle is for. Tim, is we're going to have courses in there on this so that you have access to that. But yeah, that's really interesting what's happening with search now. The number one down here, where we talk about why parents switch schools. So this is not why they choose a school per se, but I thought it was particularly interesting that, especially if anybody's ever looking for elementary or middle school families, many times that means they might have to switch schools. And what the data is saying is that what 70% of families are looking for are switching for academic reasons. So it may not be why they chose the school initially, but there's for some reason they're unsatisfied with the academics. And I bring this up because yes, the academics might seem obvious, but I've again running a lot of ad campaigns for schools. Sometimes we don't want to talk about academics maybe enough. We want to talk about some other things that are important to your school, which you absolutely can do, but you may not want to forget about the academics if you're looking to attract families that potentially are looking to switch schools. And the last few data points here, reviews are very important, right? 70% of families said difficulty finding reviews would remove a school from their list. Now we've all kind of dealt with the nagging and annoying issue with Google, where Google shut down reviews for schools. I'll give you a quick tip if you want to write this down. This may not apply to everybody, but if you want the official workaround for how to get Google reviews to turn back on for your school, you can't label yourself as a private school or you have to label yourself as a preschool. If you label yourself as a preschool, you are allowed to get Google reviews. Otherwise, if you label yourself, whatever their categories are, educational institution, private school, independent school, you cannot get Google reviews. Now, that may not apply to everybody. You may not want to have that listed next to your school on Google that you're just a preschool, but for those where it does apply, that's at least a quick workaround for you. However, that doesn't mean you can't get reviews on Niche or on Great Schools or Private School Review or even on Facebook, right? Facebook reviews can be really impactful. So having reviews are important. And I'll just mention one other thing. Yes, we want reviews to be there for the obvious purpose of somebody searches for you, they see a positive review, and that's great. We know what positive reviews can mean, but it also has an impact on your rankings in Google and in AI search. That if you're getting reviews frequently, that's kind of like a feather in the cap of the algorithm that would potentially rank you higher than somebody else because you're getting more consistent and frequent reviews. All right, and then last piece of data here is events are the new inquiries. Right, for many years, the official how to get information about your school was to fill out a big form on your website, an inquiry form, right, and then that would kind of kick off the process. What families are indicating is that the number one way they're looking to learn about the school is to attend some sort of event, either in person or virtual. It's a little bit more passive, if you will. I mean, maybe like less commitment. They can join the crowd at an open house, right? But it's important to know that if you're not doing events are really important. I was actually just on a call with a school literally right before this, where we were talking about doing a series of virtual information sessions that are topic specific. A virtual information session on financial aid, a virtual information session just about their academic programs, a virtual information session about their athletics, right? So they're hosting all these sessions. Now you don't have to get that granular, but just having events. I've seen the schools that have been doing events, whether it's monthly open houses, walk-in Wednesday type of tours, whatever it might be, are seeing their ad campaigns perform really, really well versus those ad campaigns that might just go to a form and say, hey, fill out this form for more information. All right, so let me stop there for a second. I talked a lot here, just tossing tons of data at you. Anything surprise you here? Any of these numbers or any of this information surprise anybody? Or anything jump out at you?
I'll speak up. Hi.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Hey.
I think that the in-person stuff is fabulous. I definitely invite prospective families that are either waiting or not sure, pregnant, whatever they might be, to come to parent events whenever they're coming up. And I typically will add a flyer for the next event that we're having for them to participate. And I have found that to be fabulous in getting folks in.
That's great.
Thanks, Ginger.
Yeah, no problem.
So again,
you said they're in-person events that you're primarily doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Whether it's in
That's
the
great.
evening or we had a recent town hall meeting, for example, right, and virtually online Zoom in January, just to kind of talk about tuition and what's changing for the next school year. And prospective families were there, and sure enough, they have their tuition agreements ready for the fall already. So
That's
it's a
great.
fabulous way. I'd love to learn more about the inquiry on the website. I think that if I've heard correctly before, like short and sweet. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a conversation I have very frequently. Sometimes it's almost dictated by the software you use because there is some software out there that says, "Hey, they're not going to get into our database unless you get every one of these key data points about the family, or it won't go in there. It won't even allow you to." So that aside, yes, in general, the shorter the better in terms of getting you, we'll call conversions, so getting someone to fill it out. Now, there's a balance, right? I think about when I'm setting up campaigns for schools, especially with like book a tour, um, or you could call that an inquiry, if you will. It's parent name, student name, grade level of interest, maybe birth date, if that's really important to you. Um, what else? Maybe how did you hear about it? So that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, like you can get away with that much.
Yeah, the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more likely you are to just go
Yeah,
away. I think the idea of all kinds of different ways that people can learn about your school, I really appreciate what you're saying, Ginger. Coffee and conversation, the virtual community meetings, the weekly open house, which is what I always did at Barry, the individual tour. I love parent ambassador programs. The bottom line is parents today are really struggling. The cost of private schools is going up. Inflation is going up and people are feeling stressed. People, on the other hand, are upset at what they see going on in many schools. They're hearing about shootings, they're hearing about bullying, they're hearing about testing and so forth. On the other hand, there are counter currents going on. We're seeing, for example, in the Oakland area here in the Bay of San Francisco, we're seeing a real push for early childhood that's play-based. A lot of parents are really interested in kind of non-academic programs for the young children. So we really got to watch what's going on. For example, one of the schools we work with, Clint and I, is Rockridge Montessori here in the Oakland area. And for them, we've had to adjust over and over and over again the marketing messaging to find the right messaging that gets the phone to ring because it will go into a drought period for no good reason. So we're hearing people across, certainly California, but also across the nation are saying it's harder today than it used to be in some markets.
I'd like to add something else too that I think has been working, and it has definitely slowed down the process of enrollment in a sense, but our enrollment is so intentional, and you want to be looking for those right families that want to be there, right? That are going to stay with you long term because we serve infancy through eighth grade. Google Meets. I ask a family to meet with me on Google Meet first before they even come in for the tour,
yeah,
to help prepare them for the tour. And when they come for a tour, they have to do a classroom observation. But just this idea of like building a relationship, starting to ask some questions. I've already sent them our family handbook, and it's got our attendance and our illness policy in there. So I think for families with younger children, they love having that family handbook first, and then I can just kind of go over it quickly as far as any questions, and just get to know a little bit more about them, and then they're ready for their tour and they're ready for their observation. So I think that it's more of an investment in time for sure, but the families that are staying and are going through that process are happy and here for what we want them to be here for.
Hmm.
So I don't know, something to
No, that's great stuff.
that's
Again,
great.
we'd love to hear from you all of what you're seeing and what you're feeling in your school. The bottom line is when you feel like you've got a long waiting list, like my friend Amy O'Connor down in Key West is saying, we've got such an incredible waiting list, we don't have a problem. That's a great feeling. But when you have to work hard, it's a different story. So whatever market you're in, you just, in my opinion, no matter what's happening today in your school, you need to keep working at getting the word out there in developing relationships. Ginger, I couldn't agree with you more. The idea of just, I always say it, we're dating all the wrong guys and girls. We're letting parents into our school who don't love us don't stay with us and, give us a kiss and they're gone in the morning. And that's not what we need. We need parents who really want to be in partnership with us and want to know what can they do to help us. Gratitude. Teachers are expressing so much exhaustion from parents that don't seem to listen, don't read, don't care, aren't kind. And we can't protect our teachers in the sense that we can't stop a parent from being awful, but what we can do is try to find parents who will truly appreciate them. And by the way, not try to get them and us to fight with each other. There are some parents that like doing that. Anyone else want to jump in here? We'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'll just mention from the chat, Sabine, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says our school has a monthly newsletter that goes out to prospective families that invites them to our Coffee Thursday and parent support group. That happens once a month. We've seen some really great success. So yeah, kind of similar. That's great to hear. Yeah, the more you can engage with those prospective families, use those newsletters, invite them to those coffee groups. I've heard those coffee meetings from a variety of schools and several different capacities are doing really well. So if you're not doing something like that already, the concept of a Coffee Thursday, something branded like that, I really like. All right, awesome, good stuff. All right, let's keep on going. All right, so then we'll talk about how we're going to handle all this. So, has anybody been told they're the best kept secret before? You're the best kept secret. Sure, we all love and hate to hear that, which is like they think the parents think they're being nice, but you're like, no, we want to be heard by, seen and heard by everybody. But ultimately, no school wants to be the best kept secret. So how do we influence that journey? So let's talk about the journey. And again, some of you may have seen this if you've been on other webinars, but it's worth talking about. I've been talking about it for the past 2 years, and some things changed within this. But as of right now, similar journey, which is first thinking about the best kept secret. They have to become aware that you exist, right? So how do families first hear about you? We already talked about, you need to kind of be everywhere all the time, with that, the 33 times before engaging with you. So part of that has to do with your awareness. Now, awareness can come just by word of mouth. Awareness can come just from, walking by your school, driving by your school, seeing somebody's yard sign about your school, social media, whatever it might be. They still have to become aware. And if you're sitting here feeling like not enough families are aware, well, there's some things you can do about that. Advertising being one of them, where you can run an ad today and be today if you want to be. Then we get into the findability, right? This is we spent a little bit of time earlier talking about, which is we know that 27% of families are starting with Google search. Private schools near me, Montessori schools near me, whatever it might be. And actually, I probably need to update my slide here to start including AI search into this. So are you being found with AI? I was actually working with a school and we were doing an analysis of their search engine optimization. And one of the tools that we have available to us now is how visible are you in certain prompts in the like ChatGPT and Perplexity and all of these. And so we would type in things like, what schools offer financial aid near me? And it would actually show you, are you being shown up as a cited source or a recommended source in AI responses? That was pretty cool. And that's where we're headed. So that's something you can definitely think about. All right, so can you get found? And I see some chat coming in. Okay. All right. Reputation. Now, again, we think reputation, we think reviews. That is a part of it, but not the whole story. Reviews encompasses anything from blogs and articles on your website to, yes, your reviews, to your social media presence, right? If you haven't posted anything on social media in the past 2 months, that has an impact on your reputation. Certainly reputation from friends and family, reputation in those local parent groups, right? All of those play a role. And so we actually call this, or I should say Google calls this the 0 moment of truth, where they're aware that you exist. They've done some Google search, some AI search. They're looking around your website, your social media, talking to friends and family. They're going to decide at this point whether they're going to move forward with you from the perspective of what we call the conversion point, which is book a tour, fill out a form, come to an event, whatever it might be, right? So that's the conversion point. So this 1, 2, and 3 are kind of like that fit into that 70% that we talked about before. where 70% of their mind is being made up from these 3 stages. So how do we influence those 3 stages and then get them to the conversion point? And then what we hope is they apply, they enroll, and they have a great experience, and they ultimately will influence and contribute the next person's decision, right? But when we lay all of this out, there's a lot of stuff to do here, right? Posting on social media, doing those newsletters, getting ranked in Google and now AI search, running ads, blogging, and getting more reviews, and having campaigns around your events, right? So there's a lot to do here. And look, this is certainly why Tim and I have put together the service that we did, was to actually do all of this, not just a piece of this, to do it all. So we'll talk about that, like I said, at the end for anybody that's interested. All right. I would say one of the biggest mistakes that schools make, if you're sitting here saying, okay, we need more families in our kindergarten, we need more families in our 3rd grade. One of the bigger mistakes is just starting with ads. Because yes, you could go right now, like the good and bad part of something like a Facebook is, like, right now you could all probably just log in, spend $50 and run an ad, right? They make it super simple. The bad part is they go in, they make it super simple to run ads, and it's not necessarily that you should be doing that as the first thing. So what do I mean by that? As if we were to place an order of operations for what if we had to look at all this and say, what should we do first, second, third? The thing that you should do first is focus on this conversion point, okay? Because if you don't, that's like constantly filling up a bucket with water that has holes in it, right? If you're constantly running ads and sending them to, let's say, a page on your website that's not optimized for ads, and we're going to talk about what that means, then you're spending a lot of time, money, and effort, and you're not going to get the most bang for your buck. So we actually focus. Oh, go ahead.
They get distracted looking at the biographies of your faculty or whatever.
Right.
Whatever your blog says, and that's not what we want.
That's spot on. So and we've done webinars on this concept alone, where we spent an hour or 2 hours just talking about this topic. And again, I'll come back to the circle, where this is where we wanted to have a really great community for professional development. So, like, you could leave a webinar like this and say, oh, how do I do AI search? Well, we're going to have a playbook there for you to do it. But starting with the conversion point, and then next looking at ideally your reputation, right? So what do you have on your website? Is it up to date? Making sure it's all good to go. I see a lot of schools that have blog posts from 2021. That doesn't look great on your website. It's fine to have it there. Just take off the date. I'll just use that as an example. If you have some negative reviews on your website, or not on your website, but negative reviews they could have been from 4 years ago, right? It could have been spam. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes it's somebody sees it, they click, they see the first review was a 2 stars and nothing's been there since. I would actually really focus on trying to get more reviews in to try to push that down towards the bottom, and because you're going to start getting a lot more traffic and a lot more visibility, and so your reviews do matter. And then once we've set up the campaign, we start driving traffic. So that's typically the order that we recommend. Now, you can do these things in parallel. It's not like you have to wait to get all this done. I would say if I were to run a campaign today, let's say you wanted more families at an open house event coming up, I would establish your conversion points, your dedicated pages for that event. And in case anybody's wondering what that might look like, I don't know, let me just pick one. This was the school's old open house page. So like a dedicated landing page that was like this, specifically for their event, right? Or a page like this. This was supposed for their old info sessions, I think. A longer page that was really, hey, is our school right for you? Why families love us? Testimonials, right? So pages that are dedicated to that particular campaign, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's go back to, here we go. All right. And let me tell you about why this matters. The nice part is about me owning a software company with our growth suite, our Montessori growth suite, is that I get to see a lot of data, and data is good. And what I've seen over the past 4 or 5 years is that when campaigns are run to a page on your website that is not like this or this, not that. I lost the page, not that page. Some page like this, then you'll typically see a 1 to 2% conversion rate. And if you have an optimized page with automations behind the scenes and it's really everything's really focused. I mean, if you notice on this page, right, there's no menu, little things like that, where the entire focus is just on registering for this event. Then we've seen conversions increase from 5 to 7 times, or 5 to 7 registrations, and a total increase of 2 to 4x. So that's why we say focus on the conversion point of a campaign, and then start running your traffic to that page. Before we keep going, any questions on that? Does that make sense, everybody?
I think there's a concept that we really ought to go into this with, which I call abundance. Probably all you need to fill your school is somewhere between 10 and 100 new children a year, right? That's all you need. And that sounds like a lot when you think about it from one perspective, but when you think about how many children live within 10 miles of you, the answer is it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 at the low end to 20,000. So if you really work it hard, all you need is to get just enough to fill your school and have a long abundance of families who wish they could have gotten in but didn't. We're trying to really make the phone ring.
And to make that phone ring, it's not just about having that page. It's not just about running, ads, and we've talked about that.
I
The
got
messaging.
yeah, I don't know if you saw what just came in.
No.
Just said, how much time it feels like I'm always updating keywords and SEO and images.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. That's an interesting thing you're asking. Speaking for me, this is the kind of thing where you've got to ask, what's the best use of your time and your budget? And that's the reason why I went to Clint. I said, I appreciate the software you've got. What I'm noticing is the schools that I consult with do not have the time to learn how to do this. And they don't have the time to keep up with it. They're too busy dealing with children, dealing with families, dealing with teachers. And I said, we need to create a support system for that. And that's where the foundation has really taken Clint into our fold and said, let us, all of us, including friends that are online right now, like Hillary, we need to be out there helping schools like us do it if we don't have enough time to do it ourselves. Clint, she's asked about websites. So can you talk about websites as opposed to landing pages, as opposed to deliberate outreaches like social media or emails or whatever?
Well, so the difference between obviously websites and landing pages, we do get a lot of questions like, "Hey, should we get a new website?" And depending upon the look and feel of it, maybe not. But I don't feel like you need to have a whole new website either to start running campaigns. What we focus on is landing pages for those core conversion points. So if you think about what are the core conversion points for any school, it's going to be your schedule a tour page. Maybe it's an inquiry page. Maybe it's an event registration page. Those are usually going to be your three core conversion points. And so if you just at the very least build dedicated pages that are attached to your website for those purposes, you're good. You're going to be better off than not having those. And it's not like you need a full website. We've done full websites. I mean, when you have a full website, that's the old wave the magic wand scenario where it's like, hey, we finally get a chance to put all of this marketing knowledge and admissions knowledge, in the way that we want it. That's why we have a website service as well that everything we're talking about here, we can actually build into the website as best practices. Especially when we think about what we're looking at here on the page, which is your messaging, where, we're talking about a lot of lever pulling, like, hey, we need a landing page, we need to run ads. But the foundation of all of this, none of that will work if you don't have great messaging. Great messaging. And so, again, I can't tell you how many ads I see where it's like, hey, we've been around, we're Montessori, we're accredited Montessori, we've been around for 50 years, and your child's going to love it here, right? Very generic. Anybody could write that. No, what we have certainly found is that when you want to start thinking about who are your ideal families, and you probably have two, three, four personas of families that you would consider these are great fits for us. Well, when they were looking for a school, what questions did they have? What were their concerns? What were they looking for? That's the stuff that you want to start putting all over your website, your emails, your ads, those landing pages. Even if we take this as an example, um, this school, are we right for you? So now part of this was, answering questions that are going on in a parent's mind. Like, this is a school for gifted children. Is your child feeling frustrated in their current school? Does your child thrive in learning is hands-on and project-based? You always want to think about if somebody's reading your website, your ads, that they're nodding their head, that you feel that you're resonating with them. Because if you get them nodding their head as they're reading, you've got them. You've got them hooked in because now they're going to believe that whatever solution you provide is for them. So that messaging is so, so important.
Hey, Clint,
Yeah.
Karen Kelly has raised her hand. Karen?
Oh, I didn't say it.
Yep.
Hello. Thank
Hi,
you.
Karen.
How are you?
Great.
Hi, Karen.
Good. I'm wondering about, I read the book, is it by John Medina, Brain Rules, a long time ago. And it had talked about how visual is sort of the most important way of getting information across to people, which is, I'm sure, what you're talking about here, connecting to things. And Tim, wasn't the glass classroom when people saw what children are doing, say without a guide in the room or whatever, isn't that something that really sold people on Montessori? So I'm just questioning and wondering if there are ways to put on different places, spots, websites, social media, little clips of what children can do in a Montessori environment, so they see it. It's like sometimes when I'm talking to people, or I've done a few workshops where I'll actually show the 4 to 5 minute a Montessori morning, and they've got a guided list of questions to think about while they're watching it. We'll even watch it again after that, and then they actually see that there's some dynamic here that's so different from conventional education. And that's sort of what grabs them. So I'm just trying to wonder how could maybe some of this be integrated in if it would be effective.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about is dramatic, symbolic behavior. I mean, you're trying to capture people's attention. There's a lot of ways to do it, and the glass classroom, whenever it's been done, and it's still done today. I remember at Barry doing it at White Flint Mall. We did it once right down on the mall in Washington, D.C. So, I mean, these kinds of things do work. They're a lot of work. So you're always paying for it in time and energy, in volunteers who agree to do something, or in money. And it all works. The trick is figure out what's the right way of making your phone ring. In other words, getting the responses you need to accomplish your goal, and what is getting the result, and of the various ways you could do it, whether it's a billboard, whether it's sponsoring NPR in the morning, whether it's you know uh, bumper stickers or decals on the back of the Volvos. By the way, they call Volvos Montessori wagons in Sweden. I don't know if you know that. Um, however you do it, my kid goes to Montessori and loves school. There are so many ways to get people's attention, and we just need to do it. And a lot of what Hillary and I and Clint and Joyce and Robin and all of us at the Montessori Foundation have been doing for years is saying we need to get beyond teacher training. We need to support people like us and find the outrageous things, the tchotchkes, the t-shirts, the sweatshirts. A lot of people are now out there doing mad about Montessori, things that try to get the word that, this is really more than a way of teaching kids to read. This is cool.
Yeah, and to piggyback on Karen, what you had just said, looks like in the chat here from Erica about families are choosing, it's very competitive. They're touring 10 different schools in such a competitive environment. How do you truly stand out? So to your point, Karen, about being able to visually show, and I want to um, think about it also in a slightly different way, which is regardless of how competitive it is, and Karen, you're spot on with being able to visually show that. But what you're really doing is how do you answer the questions going on in a parent's mind as they're doing the research, right? So in your case, Karen, you had said, well, we really want to show what's difference between traditional classroom and our classroom. Well, that's answering a major question, right? If a family is choosing between 10 different schools, to Erica's point, some of those are going to be Montessori, some of them are not, some of them are going to be, maybe they're choosing looking at homeschools, maybe homeschool is also an option, right? And how do you visually, or how do you do that? How do you show your difference? And then this is where the messaging, yes, visually, absolutely. But if you can also nail the messaging about what are the, like, even think about your tours that you have, what are the questions that are always coming up, right? And that's where we start building content all around that. And we do that in a couple ways. You can actually put that messaging and the visuals in your ads. Another underutilized aspect, or your email marketing. So imagine over the course of the next year, you're doing marketing, even as we're describing. Anybody who does it this way, what ends up happening is you're going to start building your contact database dramatically. And a lot of those families are falling into those categories of 6, 9, 12 months away. And so, and this is why I love working with the foundation, because they produce so much great Montessori focused content and thought leadership type content, that imagine you have this database of hundreds, if not thousands of prospective families that you could email and say, hey, we have this great video about, you can take a look inside the classroom. You just email them, you show them, they have them watch it. Like, this is what's different between the traditional and the Montessori classroom. So it's just another way to get their attention. But that's how we use some of these marketing tools, whether it's the ads, whether it's the email. But those are just levers you're pulling. It all comes down to the messaging that's going to be attractive and answering the questions that are going on in a parent's mind. So how do you stand out amongst 10 schools? You just double down on who you are and answer the questions. I guarantee you other schools are not going to be answering the questions going on, or they might wait till the tour. How do you answer that question before the tour, right? And how do you distinctly show your difference? And again, it could be in your emails, it could be on your social media, it could be on your landing pages. There's a variety of places to do it. This is why this becomes the focus. And by messaging, I mean, yes, the written word, but also visually, what's in the videos, what's in the images.
Len used to work for ISM, a group that both of us think very highly of. And independent school management always said, if you're a small school, or if you're a country school, or if you don't have a nice campus, turn your greatest weakness into an asset. Figure out who wants what you're doing. And I think we often focus on what 90% of the market wants, and we can't compete with that. You can't compete with free. What you've got to find is a family who hates public school, which isn't the normal person. But there are people that want something really different for their child. And our trick is to figure out, what are we good at? And how do we find a way of getting that across in a world where people are saturated with information? They're hearing stuff every minute of the day. Look at me, look at me, look at me. How do we get them to look at us?
Yeah, and to that end, as we look at all the data, what we can see is that when you have the right kind of marketing assets, those landing pages, the automations, the emails, the ads, and you combine it with the messaging, this is where you can see anywhere from 2 to 4 times increase or more in the results from your campaigns. So same type of ad spend, same audience. The difference is, when you really nail the messaging and put that into a proper campaign. And look, it's always nice to see other schools that are doing it. These are some schools that I meet with actually on a weekly basis, and we're reviewing numbers. And school I was just talking with last week, and it's enrollment season for everybody. But hey, how are your numbers? And they're showing just incredible over the past 12 months, over 400% increase in applications. Montessori school, who for Virginia, over 2 times their applications, they're actually using AI for their advertising and seen a huge increase in their applications. And a school in Detroit, who they do those monthly info sessions or monthly events where they're focusing their campaign and their messaging all around those events, their inquiries have tripled over the past 12 months. So it's really cool to kind of see it all come together. It's nice when a plan comes together, but that's what can happen is when you think about what do parents want, what are they looking for, what are they researching, and then how do we match how they're choosing the school with our with our marketing. So look, let me stop here. I know we're coming up at the end of the hour. I want to pause also for questions and also say, like, okay, this is the data that we have to work with. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, if anybody here is interested in how Tim and I, the service that we put together, our enrollment program accelerator, if you are our enrollment growth accelerator, if you're interested in hanging on for another 5-10 minutes, we'll talk about exactly how it works. If not, no worries. But we're here for questions. But for anybody that does want to stick around, we'll be around for 5-10 more minutes. Where what we have are 2 programs we put together. There are some schools here that maybe want a done with you type of program where it's, hey, we're good with pulling the levers, just tell us what to do, give us the tools and the software, and with coaching we can do it. There's others that say we just need you to do it all. So we put together a couple different programs to match how you may want to do it, whether you want to bring things in house or not. And we'll spend some time talking about that in the next couple minutes. But let me pause here for any questions.
Hillary's got her hand up. Hi, Hillary.
Hey, Hillary.
Hey, Clint. Hey, Tim. Hi, everyone. Something that comes to mind, and someone came in to look at our elementary program a few weeks ago, and she was beyond shocked that we asked for the child to come in and that the child was going to observe the classroom and see if this school was a good fit for her, and we would see if we were, vice versa, right? And this parent had been to probably 10 other far more expensive schools than ours because, quote, she didn't want her daughter to get lost in public school. So she was definitely looking for private. And what we do so well is focus on the child, right? So sometimes I think we want to go to, we do this with our math curriculum and we do this with reading and language, and we're exceptional at all of it. And the focus is on the child. And that was it. That sold this woman immediately. So I think sometimes just going back to our grassroots and then joining with Tim and Clint, because this is just such a brilliant program. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, guys.
Well, Hillary, one of the other things I want to congratulate you on is your interest in mindfulness and meditation, so forth, which many, many people in the Montessori community resonate with and are involved in. You create a kind of a community of those families who are the willing. And that's another way of creating that kind of lifestyle experience where it's not just the child, it's one or both of the parents feeling so incredibly connected to the school as well as to their fellow parents, all of which are really important.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
There's so much. I mean, I would love to share with you all what we did for the Rockridge Montessori School. We, for example, their sign outside looks like $1 million. This beautiful blue enamel with gold, and they have a great logo, and I just love it. It looks like such a perfect school, and they are only an early childhood center, so it's not like they're a big prep school, but they're in a very, very competitive California market for private schools and public schools. I think one of the things that Clint and I are planning to do with each of you is, if you're part of the program, we're going to do a market study with you. We're going to really go into a deep dive, try to identify, who's your competition and what are their strong points, what are your strong points, how are you messaging, how could we get a better shot. And what I appreciate about where AI comes in is we tee up 20 or more different what I would call assets for getting the phone to ring. And AI figures out which ones are working, and it keeps feeding those out more often. But there's so many tricks, and you can't do it all. There's just isn't enough time.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. For those that are here that want to kind of see, what type of program we put together to help solve this, and cover this whole family journey. So as I talked about repeatedly, how important messaging is, that's where we start, right? So we have, several schools that are starting with us over the next couple of days. And we said, okay, it's time to schedule your call with Tim. And we're going to go through an in-depth messaging session with Tim. So, it's not generic messaging. I think that's one of the biggest complaints I always hear about when you work with an agency. It's, look, you're going to use their assets, their messaging, and that has to work for everybody. No, it really should be custom. And by custom, it just means it needs to be your every school is different. Every school has a different mission, and your ideal families are different. So nail the messaging. Then what Tim was just saying, then we take get a really good understanding of your school and then your community as well. And doing a competitive study and a market study that can talk about obviously your advantages. So, if you're in that, I think Erica had mentioned, you're in that competitive environment in Georgia, right? And families are looking at 10 different schools. Okay, let's do a market study. What are they offering? What are your advantages? How do we need to highlight that in our messaging, right? And then coming up with a 30, 60, 90-day roadmap based upon what we learned from the messaging and from that study. So that's kind of how it begins, right? We're not even talking about lever pulling yet. That's where it starts. And then this is where, with the software that we have and the tools that we've built, what we can do is install what we call our growth suite. So it's a system of dedicated pages, emails, blogs, automations, and also I'll talk real quick about tracking, is that up until now, it's been almost impossible to be able to know. Well, there's always been a fence between marketing and admissions, meaning you do some sort of marketing, they come in, they fill out a form, they're in your admissions process. But if you were to ever look back, like, well, where did this family come from? Did they come from a Facebook ad? Did they come from that QR code we put in a magazine? You never had a cohesive system. That's where our software comes in that has that system that can track everything. So if we're having a conversation a year from now, you'd be able to look back and say, hey, yeah, we spent a couple $1,000s on Facebook and we got 2 enrolled families, or we ran that ad in that local newspaper or that local parent Facebook group. Did it work? And we can actually track that. So we give you all of your marketing assets, your SEO assets, your advertising assets, your blogs, your review campaigns. We install it all for you. And then we layer in AI. And how do we use AI? We use AI where it shines and does better than a human could ever do, and that's with advertising. With advertising from the perspective of, now you can let AI find your ideal families. So we have an AI-powered platform that sits on top of Facebook and Google and other platforms that allows you to target your ideal families without feeling like you need to target them. You have AI do it. And what Tim was saying is, imagine you take that messaging from Tim. We come up with 20, 30, 40 different types of creative and assets. We load it into these ad platforms, and then we let AI find the best performing mix. And then what ends up happening is, because your budget only gets spent on the best performers, your costs decrease by about 20 to 40% when you think about what does it cost for us to get a conversion, a tour, an event registration. So we have an AI-powered platform that really puts gasoline on this and makes it work fantastically and lowers your costs. And then we also have, the software is great, services are great. We also are going to have coaching sessions, an advertising coaching session, an admissions and tech office hours session, an enrollment and growth workshop. So think about having these sessions with your peers several times a week when you want to join with Tim, myself, other members of the foundation, and the community as a whole, as well as our new community that we're launching here with the Circle. You'll be in that as well. So, which is kind of one of those features that many schools over the years that I've been part of communities, they value so much, which is just the collaboration amongst other school leaders. So this is our service. We call it the Enrollment Growth Accelerator. We have a done with you and a done for you option. Some of you might be there saying, hey, yeah, we've got somebody on our marketing team. It would be great if you could just give us the tools, set it up for us, and then give us the coaching on what to do. So we have that. Others that say, we just need you to do it for us. So if you're interested in just having a discussion about what this can look like for your school, I'll put this in the chat. This is on the foundation website. You may have seen this already. I'm gonna put it up here, and I'm gonna put it in the chat. You can go here. You can click the book a call with myself and with Tim, and let me put it in the chat so that everybody has it. It's go.montessori.org/enrollment-program. So you book your call, and we'll just talk through it. We'll go through pricing. We'll go through the whole thing with you. And yeah. Oh, any questions? Any questions on the program or anything you need me to go back to? No.
All right. Well, again, coming up, we're going to be talking to you about the new programs, the other new programs we're developing with the Montessori Foundation, which has been doing consulting and strategic planning and, you know, search for new heads of schools and all kinds of things around the world for years, is the Circle, which all of our clients in the Enrollment Accelerator or Growth Suite will belong to, which is essentially like a fellowship of school leaders who are trying to solve problems together with all kinds of resources and opportunities and programs. And then the other is, wait till you see what we're about to do with the Montessori Family Alliance, because as we all know, the best parent education in the world is not enough. We have to find a way to enchant them, to get past their defenses and get them to listen to us. And I think you're going to like what Abigail and her friends are going to do for them with the inside the Montessori Family Alliance. I think that's it for this week, right?
That's it. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and hope this was helpful. And certainly, if anybody wants to chat a little bit further about how Tim and I can help with our enrollment growth program here, I put the link in the chat. And if you're interested in booking a call, and certainly you can always email myself or Tim any questions or anything we can help with in the meantime.
Would love
right.
to talk to you. And I see my friend Marlene is there, Montessori School at Chevy Chase. Marlene, how are things going in the Chevy Chase area? You're muted, Fred. And John, I'm going to call on you in a minute. You're still muted, Marlene. There you are.
Yeah.
Hi.
So in this area, a lot of moving out of the area and moving in. It's a lot of movement. And
Marlene, I saw that when I was a kid in the 1940s. That happens every 10 years.
Oh.
And that's good and bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things you ought to be doing is ads like, Montessori School at Chevy Chase, proudly, no Pee Wee football for our kids since 1963. Anyway, I look forward. By the way, on April 25th, Saturday, we're going back to Barrie and we're doing a free mini retreat for school leaders, Montessori school leaders. I hope you join us on Saturday.
Yeah, that sounds good. April 25th.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll see you at AMS?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'm back in the Maryland area, so not that far. La Plata. John Moncure, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tim. Sorry I missed you when I was up in Maryland.
I'm sorry you did too, but anytime.
Well, since usually my trips to Maryland involve something at Johns Hopkins Hospital, maybe not.
Well,
But if I'm ever there for any other reason, yeah.
You're always welcome to come up for vacation.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We got a retreat center and we're happy to see you. Hello, Peg. How are you, dear? All right, we'll let everyone go. We will see you on Thursday when I believe we have very special guest for our Montessori leaders. Excuse me, that one's called the Independent School Leaders Forum. So we'll see you 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday. Goodbye, everyone. Talk soon.